Welcome to A Magical Life, Health, Wealth and Weight Loss. I'm your host, Magic Barclay, lead practitioner at Holistic Natural Health Australia and #1 best-selling author. In this podcast, I aim to give you practical tips on how to accelerate and sustain your health, increase your financial, spiritual and emotional wealth, and to look at something that haunts many of us needlessly, weight loss. In some episodes, I'll have guests available to give you even more tips, but in others, the floor is yours. Drop us a line at A Magical Life Podcast on Facebook and let me know what you would like to know more about. Now, sit back and enjoy, because it is time for you to create and truly discover a magical life. Welcome back to A Magical Life. I'm your host, Magic Barclay, and today is just a quick episode on the basics on how pathogens harm you. There's so much going on in the world at the moment, and this is a war in the name of disease or in the name of health. And why? Because we fear a pathogen. So I thought I'd break down for you the three main pathogens. We will discuss a couple of others, but the three main ones and how they work. So, of course, first of all, you have bacteria. These guys are often blamed for all the evils going on in your body. We're prescribed over and over from childhood antibiotics for things that are not bacterial problems. Bacteria aren't all bad. There's actually good bacteria that we need, and many of those live in our gut and they help make neurotransmitters in our gut. So yes, chemicals that help operate our brain and our brain's responses to things actually start in the gut, where they're made by bacteria. Now, we also have fungus. Fungus can be good and bad again. There's no black or white here. Many fungus are good. The whole idea of a fungus is that it's a microorganism that breaks things down. So this is why your compost pile at home works, because the fungus gets in and it breaks things down. But it can do that in your body too, and sometimes that's not a good thing. So one fungus that is pathogenic is Candida. Now, many naturopaths and doctors will talk about Candida albicans. They think that's the only Candida there is. There's actually about 270 different strains of Candida. And again, they're not all bad, but they need to be in balance. More on that in a moment. But there are other fungus, and that includes molds, which there are 37 known types of mold. Again, not all bad. Most of them are, and they're the ones that we know and really don't love. And then here's that word. We're all terrified of it at the moment: viruses. Now, viruses are fine in our bodies if they're in a latent form or in a dormant stage. And how they do that is the RNA of a virus is recognized by our innate immune system, our first line of defense. If the innate immune system can't work it out, the acquired immune system jumps in, but the RNA is recognized by our body. Now, you actually cannot catch a virus. I'm going to say that again. You cannot catch a virus. What you can do is your body's immune system goes, seen you somewhere before. I know that RNA strand. What I'm going to do is launch an attack to protect the body. So that's what happens. Now, while we're on viruses, I need to say this. Please don't stop listening just because you think I'm a nutter, because I'm really not. I'm talking science here. And there are many published studies by reputable places that will back this info up. Do your research, folks. And let's talk coronaviruses. Now, coronaviruses include the common cold. They include the flu. In fact, they include so many things. There's over 1,000 known coronaviruses. So this whole fear going on in the world about a coronavirus, well, I think we need to put it into perspective. We have lived with coronaviruses since time began. Every living thing can carry the RNA strand of a coronavirus, but you cannot catch a new virus. You can inject a new virus, you can inhale a new virus, and you can ingest a new virus. But for your body to launch an immune response, it needs to understand what the RNA message is telling the body. And believe it or not, our body has dealt with coronaviruses for so long that it knows what the RNA strand is, and it can mount its own defense. Now, I'm not going to get into what's currently going on. I just want you to understand how viruses and the body work. Now, I did say there's a relationship between all of these three types of pathogens. And that is, it's a little bit complex, but here we go. This relationship is demonstrated in a human body. Of all of the cells in a human body, only 10% of those cells are actually human cells. Most of them, up to 90%, are pathogenic, but not in a bad way. And this is because they have a symbiotic relationship with each other. Here's how this goes. Viruses eat bacteria and fungus. Bacteria eat viruses and fungus. And fungus eat viruses and bacteria. Now, I'm saying eat, but what they actually do is destructure them and take the parts that they need to keep the human body safe, or any animal's body, but we're talking human as an example here. Take one of those three pathogen features away, let's say by administering antibiotics as an example. You take out the bacteria, then there's an imbalance. And what happens when you take antibiotics? You start getting UTIs. You start getting thrush. Guess what? That is a fungal overflow. So take away bacteria, viruses and fungus will thrive. This is why some people get thrush and some people get the flu. Now, that's an example with taking bacteria out. If you take viruses out, then you cannot stimulate an immune response naturally. And so what happens is bacteria and fungus come up. And this is where people start getting this itchy skin and, white-coated tongue and itchy ears and tonsillitis. It's not because of a new infection. It's because you actually tried to stamp out a messenger. It's because you actually tried to stamp out a messenger infection. So a virus that was in a latent form, not doing any harm, but letting your immune system know, hey, if you see this guy, here's his mugshot, call me, I'll ramp up the antibodies and you'll be fine. But because we've dulled those antibodies, we get a bacterial infection or a fungal infection. And the same goes when we treat fungus in isolation. Now, this is all when we treat these things in isolation. So treat fungus in isolation. What happens? You start to get a runny nose, itchy eyes. You feel like the flu's coming on. There's your viral infection. You might have bacterial infections. You get swollen lymph nodes. All sorts of things can happen because these three pathogens have to work in a symbiotic relationship. Now, there are other pathogens that we come across as humans. Well, any animal comes across them. But again, using humans as an example, because I'm pretty sure most of my listeners are human. So here goes. Parasites. Deathly silence after that one. Why? Tonight's a full moon where I am while I'm recording this for you. And have you ever wondered why people go a bit loony on a full moon? Because that's when parasites are most active. Yes, they work on lunar phases. There's been a lot of studies done into this and they're ongoing. But what we see is parasitic action ramps up on a full moon. Not to say that they're not active the rest of the month, because they are. Now, what happens when a parasite finds you? Well, parasites are larger organisms than anything else that we've discussed so far in this episode. And what happens is they usually have some passengers on them. So parasites carry new viral cells into your body. Now, remember I said you can only get a new virus by ingesting, injecting, or inhaling. Well, the parasite bites you and it injects these new viral cells into you. The parasites also include ticks. So we know there's a lot of tick-borne disease, but we know when you go on that great holiday, you drink some water somewhere, or maybe you go for a swim somewhere, and you come back and you've got rumbly, runny belly, headaches, fatigue, you got a parasite. Now you go after that parasite, you try and treat that. All of a sudden you've got Epstein-Barr virus or Ross River fever or something horrible like that. And that's because that parasite carried a new virus to your body. So a new RNA thread of viral cells that your body has not seen before. So there are pathogens that harm, but there are pathogens, they don't really heal, but they help us exist and function. Let's put it that way. So that is the basics on pathogens. In a nutshell, how pathogens harm you. Well, if you take one out, you create an imbalance and the others take over. That's just a small science lesson for the listeners, because I really am getting a little bit fed up with hearing that you can catch a virus or that we need to shut down the world because of a virus. And just on that, let me just say this. And again, I don't mean to offend anyone by saying this, but this is real science. When you try and stamp out a virus, or any pathogen for that matter, we've seen it with bacteria in the past. When you try and stamp it out, it comes back bigger and stronger and meaner. We've heard of this with bacteria. So we've heard of superbugs now in hospitals because we tried to stamp out strep or staph. And by overuse of antibiotics, we've created resistant strains of these bacteria that are now known as superbugs. And we're doing exactly the same thing now with viruses. And we are creating resistant strains of viruses. Whereas if we let them go on their merry way, and not to say here, let them kill gazillions of people, but if we let it play out and let our immune systems take care of what they already understand, then any virus becomes weaker. And just on pathogens, my final word on pathogens, my final scientific word on pathogens is when you are under stress, pathogens have fun. So when you are under stress, be it mental stress, emotional stress, physical stress, any stress, that is when we see pathogens start having too much fun in our bodies. It's where you might start getting hives under stress. You might start getting hepatitis symptoms under stress, other inflammation symptoms. You start getting sick under stress. You get runny noses and aches and pains, and, you just feel really crappy under stress because you've opened the door for pathogens to have fun. So how about we shut that door? We start respecting our immune systems. We start respecting this symbiotic relationship that pathogens have. We start respecting science of thousands of years without trying to override it, without trying to say we know better, because we tried to do that before, remember, with antibiotics, and it didn't work. There's my scientific word. This was your episode 101. And in 102, we have David McBee talking everyday life lessons. For now, listeners, thank you for your time. Go forth and create your magical life. Thanks for listening today. Please subscribe to hear future episodes, leave a review, and share this podcast. You can follow us on Facebook at A Magical Life Podcast or at Holistic Natural Health Australia. That's holistic with a W. You can find us on Instagram at Holistic Natural Health or at www.holisticnaturalhealth.com.au. That's where you'll access all sorts of articles, freebies, and more.